Welcome, everyone. My name is Stella, and thank you for tuning into Bibi and Yaya, where you will hear real-life stories every week which people have sent to us, detailing their life experiences, feelings, emotions, and reactions along the way. We have a very interesting story for you today, which comes to us from Lara, and unfortunately it is probably a very common one. She is in a relationship with her boyfriend and finds out that she is pregnant. What does her boyfriend do with this news? And how does Lara react to his words and his reactions? And how does she respond to this baby news herself? Well, let's find out. But first, please note that the people who write into us share their stories in hopes of connecting with others who may be able to give advice, comments, and opinions, such as yourself. You may have just the right solution to today's personal story. Here on Bibi and Yaya, we will also share our thoughts and opinions with the hopes that we can help those who share their stories with us. If you have a story to tell, please send us an email by using the email provided in the description box below. And by hitting the thumbs up button, sharing, and subscribing to this channel, you can stay up to date with these very personal stories. This helps us to bring you new life stories and adventures every week, so you don't miss a thing. Also, you may hear a story here on Bibi and Yaya which resonates with your life. If so, you can read what other people have posted to help you with your own personal situation. These personal stories are real, and people need advice. You have the opportunity to help them with your own comments or solutions. And now, here's Lara's story. It was the middle of the night, and I was pregnant and crying on the pavement outside a Canadian Airbnb. My boyfriend Steve had just left me because I'd wanted to talk about why I might want to go through with my unexpected pregnancy. I felt like I was looking down on myself from above, watching us hug and cry, hearing him tell me that he loved me, but couldn't cope with the situation. I could see him getting into the taxi and speeding off, and me, left behind, feeling broken and alone, in shock, thinking, did that really just happen? Only days earlier, 3 years ago in June 2018, I'd begun to suspect I was pregnant. We had agreed I'd come off the hormonal contraceptive 10 months earlier because of the effect it was having on my body, and we were using the withdrawal method. I hadn't even missed a period, but I had strange pulling sensations in my stomach and kept needing to go to the bathroom. I took a test, and it was positive. My first instinct was to head to the pregnancy termination clinic. I knew because Steve, who was 26, was not ready to be a dad. We'd been seeing each other on and off for around 4 years, having been friends from the age of 16, but we both lived with our parents. Dazed, I told him the news briefly, in a phone call. There was the assumption that I'd have a termination and our relationship would then be able to continue. But fate intervened. At the clinic, they told me it was too early to take the pregnancy termination route. They had to ensure it was a viable pregnancy first, not an ectopic pregnancy, which is a condition where the baby grows outside the uterus. I was about to teach a yoga course in Canada, so I booked an appointment for my return to Canada. Steve was due to meet me later for a weekend in Toronto, so I thought we would talk then. However, that distance gave me some breathing space. I realized I wanted to talk about the option of keeping the baby, and that I couldn't bear the thought of having to put an end to my pregnancy and staying with him if he couldn't discuss it with me. When he arrived at the Airbnb, it was late, so we went to sleep. But the next day, I said, "What's the worst case scenario about me having the baby?" And he said, "That is the worst case scenario." I asked, "What's the best case scenario?" He replied, "There isn't one." I left feeling rejected. Having resolved to get through the weekend together, though, I went for a walk to clear my head. When I got back, he had booked a flight home. It was the only time I felt such rage towards him. I shouted at him, "Are you really going to be the guy who leaves his pregnant girlfriend in a foreign country?" I felt so abandoned and rejected. It took hindsight to realize it was because he couldn't cope, not because he thought I couldn't cope. Back home, I returned to the clinic and I decided to put my trust in fate. If the scans showed that the pregnancy wasn't viable, then it wasn't meant to be. If it was, I would keep the baby. When the doctor told me everything was going perfectly, it confirmed keeping the baby was the right thing to do. I had one final conversation with Steve, telling him about my decision, and I haven't seen him since. At the time, I wasn't angry with him, only worried. I knew he had had anxiety in the past and wasn't ready for the responsibility of being a dad. I was concerned about him, so I spoke to his mother, who tried to get me to change my mind. "It's just a tablet, and then you can forget about it," she said. It was a turning point. I knew it would be just my family, the baby, and me. I could have been bitter, angry, or upset, but this wasn't how I imagined I'd become a mother. And I didn't want to mope around missing my ex either. So I chose to embrace my pregnancy. I didn't go to prenatal classes as I knew it would mainly be couples. Instead, I hired a doula and focused on teaching pregnancy yoga. I shared my joy with my mom, Linda, my dad, Brian, and my sister, Anne. Yes, there were hard times. I had a growth scan in the final trimester, which doctors were worried about, and I had no one to share my fears with. I'd wanted a home birth, but when my son Jason arrived in February 2019, it was via emergency C-section. Then Jason had a heart murmur that they wanted to keep an eye on, and dealing with all the diapers and feedings alone felt overwhelming. My family, though, has been amazingly supportive. I lived with them until September last year, but it's wonderful to finally have my own place where Jason can make a mess. Lockdown days with a baby were often lonely. People ask me whether I think Steve will return to our lives. The honest answer is no, and I'm fine with that. I'm independent and I'm happy with the dynamic of my family, my son, and me. I'm not currently looking for a man, but wow, I'd love more children one day. At the moment, Jason thinks daddy is the general term for a man, which can be amusing in the supermarket. Eventually, I'll explain it all to him in an age-appropriate way. I would never tell him, "You don't have a daddy." As well as my family, I've built up my own single mothers community online to share my thoughts and engage with other women. There is still a stigma around the single moms-to-be. Women who are single and pregnant often don't talk about it and try to go under the radar until the baby appears. Ending guilt and shame takes time. My advice to other single pregnant women is to seek support. There are issues that are not spoken about when it comes to being a single mom, such as feeling like termination might be the only option or how to cope if you're leaving an abusive relationship. These issues aren't in your classic guidebook, which presumes a man is around, and in my situation, there is not. Thank you, Lara, for sharing a bit of your world with us. You are a very strong and courageous woman to realize that you can absolutely raise your son on your own. With family, friends, and good advice from experts, I am sure you can handle anything dealing with being a single mom. Lara wasn't sure if she would keep her son, who was growing in her womb, if Steve was a no-show father. But she made the right decision for herself by not ending her pregnancy and keeping her child. She knew that a precious life was growing inside her and she could feel him moving in her belly. Pregnancy termination is not the only choice women have when deciding whether or not to keep a baby. Young women are certainly capable of being single moms. Lara is the perfect example. Also, there is the issue of adoption. There are so many people who cannot have children of their own, and adopting a child is a blessing for them, a dream come true. If you or anyone else faces this scenario and are worried or afraid of becoming a single mother, please reach out to people who can help you make the best decision for yourself and your baby. Much success and well wishes to Lara and her son Jason. Perhaps you may have the right solution or best advice for Lara. If so, we would like to hear from you. And you can read other people's comments, solutions, and opinions below relating to this and other real-life situations. They could very well mirror your own thoughts, or they could be quite different from yours. Remember that by liking and subscribing to Bibi and Yaya, you will hear me read letters every week which people send us about issues they are dealing with in their lives. These are real-life personal stories and people's everyday experiences. And don't forget, if you have a personal story or issue which you would like to share with us, please send us an email using the email provided in the description box below. We would be happy to hear from you and offer any advice on how to deal or cope with your personal experience. Thank you for joining us today here on Bibi and Yaya. See you next time.